Picture this. It's the early 2000s, and something strange is happening across America. Everyone wants to buy a house. Your neighbor buys one, then another neighbor. Soon it feels like the whole street is moving into bigger, fancier homes. And here's the wild part. Even people without much money are buying houses too. Now, normally when you want to borrow money from a bank to buy a house, they ask you a lot of questions. Do you have a stable job? How much money do you make? Can you actually afford to pay us back every month? But during this time, banks stopped asking these questions. They started handing out home loans to pretty much anyone who walked through the door. It was like giving car keys to someone who never learned to drive. These loans had a special name, subprime mortgages. That's just a fancy way of saying loans given to people who probably shouldn't get them. People with bad credit scores, people without steady jobs, people who could barely afford their rent, let alone a mortgage payment. You might be wondering, why would banks do something so risky? Well, they had a plan. They didn't actually want to keep these risky loans. They were going to pass them along to someone else. We'll get to that in a moment. Meanwhile, housing prices kept climbing higher and higher. Everyone believed this would never end. People thought, even if I can't afford this house right now, I'll just sell it next year for way more money. It seemed like free money was falling from the sky, but it wasn't real. So, the banks had all these risky loans sitting on their books, thousands and thousands of mortgages from people who might not pay them back. What did they do? They got creative in the worst possible way. Wall Street came up with what seemed like a brilliant idea. They took all these individual mortgages and bundled them together into big packages. Imagine taking 1,000 different home loans, mixing them all up, and creating one giant investment product. They called these mortgage-backed securities. Sounds complicated, but it's really just a bundle of home loans packaged up and sold to investors. Here's where it gets really sneaky. These banks convinced rating agencies to look at these packages and give them ratings. You know how teachers give grades in school. These agencies were supposed to tell investors if something was safe or risky. And shockingly, they gave most of these packages top ratings, AAA, the best grade possible. They said these bundles were as safe as government bonds. Big investment banks like Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns couldn't get enough of them. They bought billions and billions of dollars worth. Pension funds bought them. Insurance companies bought them. Everyone wanted a piece because they thought it was guaranteed money. The people selling these products made massive commissions. The rating agencies got paid huge fees. The original banks got the risky loans off their books. Everybody was winning, or so they thought. The whole system ran on one simple belief: housing prices will keep going up forever. But that's not how the real world works. Nothing goes up forever. Then reality hit, and it hit hard. People who took out those subprime mortgages started missing payments. Remember, these were folks who could barely afford these homes in the first place. When their adjustable rate mortgages reset to higher payments, they simply couldn't keep up. One missed payment became 2, then 3, then foreclosure. Suddenly, houses that were supposed to keep increasing in value started losing value. When lots of homes go into foreclosure at the same time, it floods the market. More houses for sale means lower prices. The bubble was popping right before everyone's eyes. Now, think about those mortgage-backed securities we talked about, those fancy packages that got AAA ratings. They were filled with these failing mortgages. Almost overnight, investments worth billions of dollars became nearly worthless. It's like buying what you thought was a bag of gold coins, only to open it and find rocks inside. The panic spread fast. In September 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed. This wasn't some small bank. This was a giant investment firm that had been around for over 150 years. It filed for the largest bankruptcy in American history. Gone, just like that. Other banks looked at each other with suspicion. If Lehman Brothers could fail, who else was hiding worthless investments? Banks stopped trusting each other. They stopped lending money to each other. They stopped lending money to businesses. The whole financial system froze like a computer that just crashed. Credit markets seized up. The machine that keeps our economy running just stopped working. And that's when things got really scary. When banks stop lending, everything falls apart. Think about it. Businesses need loans to pay their workers, buy supplies, and keep their doors open. When credit dried up, Companies that were perfectly healthy suddenly couldn't operate. Layoffs started happening everywhere, small businesses closed, big corporations cut thousands of jobs. The unemployment rate shot up month after month. People who had nothing to do with risky mortgages or Wall Street were losing their paychecks. Factory workers, teachers, store managers, regular folks just trying to make a living. The stock market went into free fall. Retirement accounts that people spent decades building vanished in weeks. Life savings cut in half. Some people lost everything they'd worked for their entire lives. And here's the thing about our modern world. Everything is connected. What started as an American housing problem became a global disaster. Banks in Europe held these toxic mortgage-backed securities too. Countries like Iceland, Ireland, and Greece faced their own banking crises. The financial contagion spread like wildfire across continents. Giant companies like General Motors and Chrysler needed government bailouts just to survive. AIG, one of the world's largest insurance companies, was on the brink of total collapse. The government had to step in with emergency money because if AIG failed, it would take down even more banks with it. Families lost their homes to foreclosure. People couldn't find work for months or years. Young graduates entered the worst job market in generations. This wasn't just numbers on a screen anymore. This was real pain affecting millions of real people who did nothing wrong. The government had to make a choice: let the entire financial system collapse or step in with taxpayer money. They chose to intervene. The bailout package totaled over $700 billion. That's your money and my money being used to rescue the very banks that caused this mess in the first place. It left a bitter taste for many people. Why should Wall Street get rescued when regular families were losing everything? Fair question. But economists argued that letting all the banks fail would have made the Great Depression look mild by comparison. The recovery was slow and painful. It took years for unemployment to come back down. Some people never got back what they lost. Entire communities were devastated by foreclosures. The scars from 2008 are still visible today if you know where to look. But we did learn some important lessons. New regulations were put in place to stop banks from taking such reckless risks. The Dodd-Frank Act created stricter rules about lending and required banks to keep more cash on hand for emergencies. We learned that when everyone says an investment can't fail, be very cautious. We learned that housing prices don't always go up. We learned that greed and short-term thinking can destroy the economy. Most importantly, we saw how deeply connected our financial system really is. One sector's problems can bring down the entire global economy. Understanding what happened in 2008 isn't just about history, it's about recognizing warning signs. It's about asking questions when things seem too good to be true, because those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it.